Today's topic is super important because a lot of applicants are making this mistake. Can you combine different jobs to count towards your years of work experience on your MPNP expression of interest? That's the question. I have covered similar topics before. However, I have another direct response from MPNP that even outlines this scenario more clearly and with some pointed examples. So if you're applying for MPNP, I'm going to help you avoid a mistake that could cost you your application. And it's a mistake many people make without even realizing. So let's clear this up once and for all. So I recently received a question in the comment section. It relates to someone who recently received a procedural fairness letter, and that's never a good thing, because MPNP questioned their work experience. So here's what happened. On screen, we're going to read. So this is it. Actually, I received a procedural fairness letter from MPNP after submitting my EOI, that's the expression of interest. They questioned my 4-year work experience declaration, even though I had over 3.8 years in China and 6 months in Manitoba. I am so confused. So here she counted the Manitoba demand, that is the 6 months with the previous work experience, and selected 4 years job experience while submitting the EOI. Is it logical? Adding work experiences from assessment factor 5 to assessment factor 3. I appreciate you have looked into my question and answered it with proper guidance. So that was the question. Before diving into it, let's look at what is a procedural fairness letter for those who are not familiar with that. In cases where an application is being considered for refusal, a procedural fairness letter, PFL, will be sent to the applicant or their representative if applicable. The applicant has 30 days from the date of the letter to submit additional information to address the concerns identified in the letter. The PFL is the only opportunity given to the applicant to address the program's concerns. Any additional information provided at any point within the 30-day period will be taken into consideration before the officer issues a recommendation on the application. If no response is received, a recommendation is issued with the information available on file. All recommendations are reviewed by at least one other officer before the decision is finalized. So, as it says here, in cases where an application is being considered for refusal, that's the only time that they issue a PFL, just to give you, the applicant, an opportunity to clarify yourself, because if it is refused, there is no appeals process for you. And that is why I feel it's not a good thing to get a PFL, but it's also not a bad thing if you can clarify whatever issues that needs to be clarified. So let's look at MPNP's policy guide on how you should count your work experience. You should only count full years of work experience you have already completed, full years. It says do not round up your work experience. Example, if you have gained 7 months of work experience, you would have to answer less than 1 because 7 months does not equate to a year. You should only declare full-time skill work experience you have gained up to the date you are submitting your EOI, and must not add any future experience you may be gaining while you're waiting to submit your full application. The bottom here, it says, please note that should you have less full-time work experience than you claim, a subsequent application to the MPNP will be refused, and you may be subject to a ban, which will keep you from submitting another EOI for a period of 2 years. So this is the opportunity that they're giving you by issuing you a PFL. It's a very serious violation. And that is why before completing any forms, before completing any application, you need to do your research first and foremost so that you are guided properly. So let's circle back to the question. Someone recently got a PFL because of the MPNP question their work experience. And here's what's happened in simple terms. The person worked for 3 years and 8 months in China, and then 6 months in Manitoba. Okay? What the person went on to do is to combine both work experiences together and call it 4 years, 4 full years of experience, and submitted that on their EOI. Well, it's safe to say that maybe this person did not read the MPNP policy or misunderstood. And not only the policy, but when you are creating your EOI, there's a question mark there that explains all of this. And if you read it, you don't understand, then you can reach out to someone or do some research and get some clarity. So the person added both work experience together, call it 4 years experience, and submit that on their EOI. So that would be 3.8 plus half of the year, which is 6 months in Manitoba, and said, okay, when I have 4 years of full-time experience. That is not allowed. All right? So here's the problem. And again, you have to revert to the policy. You are guided by the policy. It matters not how other provinces that they may treat how you work or you calculate work experience. It matters not how the federal level treats with work experience. You are applying for MPNP, so you have to be guided by MPNP's policy on work experience. You cannot round up your numbers according to the policy guideline for MPNP. Some persons would say if it was the same NOC code and different job, then you could. However, that's not what I saw on the policy guide. So if you're in doubt, then you can write to MPNP. Right? So this is where it gets very critical. MPNP questioned this because the system rule says you just cannot round up or combine work experience across different jobs to meet 4 years of experience. Each job or role must be counted independently unless they are the same occupation, the same NOC, no significant gaps or breaks. All right, so you have to note what the policy document says for MPNP. So why is this a problem? Well, if you overstate or misrepresent your work experience, even accidentally by combining different jobs or unrelated work experience to claim more years, then MPNP sees this as misrepresentation. And they see this as inaccurate EOI submission, and that can trigger, which it did, a procedural fairness letter. And that can then further lead to possible refusal or ban. A PFL again means MPNP is giving you, the applicant, a chance to explain yourself, but trust me, this is not a situation that you want to be in. This is why it's so important to understand and follow the rules exactly. This is directly from MPNP about calculating work experience. Let's go through it. This is directly from, quote unquote, the horse's mouth, as the saying says. As stated in the EOI help button, you must calculate the total amount of years of work experience. That's 4 years of work experience you have completed over the last 5 years prior to the date you are submitting your EOI. Follow these steps to accurately answer the EOI question. How many years of full-time work experience do you have in the past 5 years? It says, note the current date. Identify the date that you're completing the EOI. For example, if you are submitting your EOI on July 5, 2024, you will need to calculate your full-time work experience from July 5, 2019 to July 5, 2024. That would account for the 5 years up to the date that you are submitting your EOI. So this is like just a typical example of the 5 years. Calculate the relevant period. You should only count full years of work experience you have already completed to the date you are submitting your EOI and must not add any future work experience. The MPNP only considers full-time employment, which is defined as at least 30 hours of work for the same employer over the period of 1 week. include all eligible work experience, count all full-time work experience, both in Canada and abroad. That's very clear. Next, we have how to calculate the total duration. Only count complete years of full-time experience. Do not round up partial years to a whole year. Do not include jobs held for 6 months or less. For instance, if you have the following work experiences. So job A, July 5, 2019 to July 5, 2021, that would have been 2 full solid years. Okay, let's look at job B. September 1, 2021 to June 30, 2023. In that example, that would have been 1 year and 10 months. And then when you look at job C, July 1, 2023, July 5, 2024, that would be a solid year. Just looking at this and reminiscing on the policy, how many years of full-time employment does this person have? Let's look at it even before we go and look at the other information supplied by MPNP. So this is exactly 4 years. 2 full years here for job A. So this would be 2 years. Job B is 1 year and 10 months. So the exact amount of full-time experience would be 1 year, because 10 months does not equate to that 1 year full-time employment, and you cannot round up. So this would be 2 plus 1 year. So yes, you're giving up 10 months, but it's just a policy. You cannot round up, okay? So that's 2 years and 1 year here, because this did not equate to a full 2 years. So that's 3 years so far, and then 1 year. So that would be 2, 3. So this would be 4 years of full-time work experience according to MPNP standard. I hope that is clear. Even though if you should count everything, you would get 4 years and 10 months according to MPNP's policy guide and standard. You do not round up the months. 1 year and 10 months equal 1 year of work experience, because it's not fully 2 years. All right, let's continue. You would report 4 years of full-time work experience, and they break it down. 2 years from job A, 1 year from job, they should be C. Yes, right? So 2 from A, 1 from C, and then they explain the 10 months from job B do not count as a full year and should not be rounded up. It's so clear. This is directly from MPNP. Again, you do not round up partial years to a whole year. Do not include jobs held for 6 months or less. Okay? And it's very clearly outlined here. The 10 months from job B, which is 1 year, 10 months, doesn't count as a full year and should not be rounded up. That is it right there. That's how the policy, a very simple calculation. And it covers all the scenario. It covers the very scenario that I got. The person worked for 3 years and 8 months in China. So that gives the person what? 3 years of full-time experience, right? Because the 8 months does not equate to a year. Now the person did 6 months in Manitoba. So therefore, the full years of work experience remains 3 years, because here it says, do not include jobs held for 6 months or less. Doesn't affect you if you had your job in Manitoba for 6 months. You're still eligible under MPNP, but in terms of counting your work experience, you would not classify that 6 months as 1 year because you merged it with your abroad job. And this was clearly articulated by the response from MPNP. So I hope once and for all, this clarifies that particular question. So what's the right way to count your work experience? Well, we have looked at it, but let's recap. Count only full-time skilled work experience in complete years. And that is what is important, in complete years. Each full year must be based on actual time work, no rounding up. If the jobs are different, they should be counted separately, even if the total adds up to a nice number. Even if the 3.8 years in China plus the 6 months in Manitoba equal 4 years and 2 months, it gives you a solid number, right? So instead of having 3 years of experience, it looks better to say 4 years. Even in that case, it should be counted separately, and you only count full years, complete years. 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, that does not equate to a complete year according to MPNP's standard. Okay? So in the case of the person who contacted me, he or she should have listed 3 years as him or her work experience and not round up to 4 years. Hence, the reason for the PFL. So as you can see, this is a simple but very common mistake that can have big consequences. The takeaway is very simple but important. Do not combine unrelated jobs or round up work experience when submitting your MPNP EOI. Accuracy matters. Misrepresenting even by mistake can seriously hurt your application. Be honest, be accurate, follow the guideline. If you're confused, reach out to MPNP before submitting or speak to an expert. Stay informed, stay tuned here because I'm here to make this process simple for you. I hope this makes it clear. Count only full years, avoid rounding up, and always stay honest in your EOI. Thank you so much for watching. If this video helped you, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share with others so they don't fall into the same trap. If you still have questions, drop them in the comments, and I'll be happy to help. There are lots of value-packed videos on PR, on MPNP, so please check them out